My family kicked me out for marrying a welder. At a university event, my sister sneered. Still, but the dean silenced her by announcing our $25,000 donation. This isn't just a story about a family. It's about the suffocating pressure of expectations, the sting of betrayal, and the moment you finally find the courage to reclaim your own life. Because sometimes, the people who are supposed to lift you up are the very ones burying your dreams alive. I stood frozen in my parents' doorway, my portfolio case heavy in my trembling hands. The laughter and chatter from inside died the moment my father saw me. That familiar look, a cocktail of disappointment and impatience, flickered in his eyes. "Perfect timing, Rowena," he said, waving me in with the casual authority of a university department head. We were just discussing Cressida's promotion to associate professor, 15 months ahead of schedule. Youngest in university history. His voice swelled with pride as he gestured toward my twin sister, who sat glowing at the dining table, surrounded by congratulatory flowers. I carefully placed my portfolio, packed with sketches for tomorrow's design interview, next to the door. The table was set for a celebration dinner I hadn't even been told about until this morning. "That's wonderful, Cress," I managed, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Congratulations." My mother bustled in from the kitchen, a steaming casserole in her hands. When she thought I wasn't looking, she leaned toward my father, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow still hit me like a physical blow. "At least we have one daughter we can be proud of." I pressed my palms against my thighs, desperate to stop them from shaking. "Rowena," my father called as I tried to slip away toward the bathroom. "Perhaps seeing your sister's success will inspire you to reconsider this drawing phase. There's still time for the economics graduate program, a respectable career like your sister's." My childhood bedroom told the whole story. Even during a recent visit, I saw it, frozen in time, split perfectly down the middle. Cressida's half was a shrine to her academic awards on custom shelves my dad had installed himself. My high school art competition certificates once hung on my side, but Mom had removed them years ago to avoid clutter. The bare wall was a silent scream of their priorities. Every Christmas, same script. Dad would gather the extended family, then read our report cards aloud, from elementary school straight through college. Cressida's straight A's in economics and math earned approving nods. My A's in art and gasped B's in economics prompted concerned glances and questions about applying myself. Last Christmas, Aunt Margaret had asked if I was still doing those little drawings, while Uncle John practically canonized Cressida for her thesis publication. "I've made a decision," I announced, walking back into the dining room. The words felt foreign in my mouth, dangerous and thrilling. "I've accepted an internship at Horizon Design Studio." The green bean casserole crashed onto the table as Mom's hands flew to her face. "But what about the economics program your father arranged? Do you know how many people would die for that opportunity?" Her eyes welled with tears, the familiar guilt strategy that had worked countless times before. "I want to build my own path," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Design is what I'm good at, what I love." My father, as if I hadn't spoken, turned away from me entirely. "Cressida, talk some sense into your sister. She listens to you." Just like that, I was dismissed from my own life decision. The conversation flowed around me, about me, without me. "Rowena, be reasonable," Mom added. "Who will pay for your final semester? Your apartment lease? Your health insurance?" The threats weren't subtle. Everything I had existed at their mercy. Cressida reached across the table, patting my hand with rehearsed sympathy. "Maybe you should try Dad's way first, Ro. You can always do the art thing later, as a hobby." In that moment, I saw it clearly for the first time. I'd never been Rowena to them. I'd only ever been the other twin, Cressida's less successful reflection. The daughter they got stuck with in the 2-for-1 deal. I looked at my portfolio case sitting by the door. Inside were the drawings that made me feel alive, the work that made me feel like myself. For once, I didn't apologize. The next morning, the sun filtered through Mom's study curtains as I searched for a missing tax form she'd promised to mail weeks ago. I slid open the bottom drawer of her desk, expecting stationery and forgotten bills. What I found instead stopped my breath. A thick envelope with my name in bold letters peeked from beneath a stack of Christmas cards. The return address read, Rhode Island School of Design. The postmark dated back 3 years. My fingers trembled as I extracted the already torn open envelope. Inside, the words blurred, then sharpened. We are pleased to offer you admission, full scholarship, studio space. Everything I had dreamed of. While applying in secret during my sophomore year, my legs gave way. I stumbled backward, colliding with the bookshelf. A framed family photo crashed to the floor, glass splintering across the hardwood. In the picture, I stood slightly behind Cressida, my smile tight while hers radiated confidence. I scanned the letter again, searching for any indication that my parents had tried to contact me about it. Nothing. 3 years ago, Mom had consoled me for weeks over my rejection, suggesting it was a sign to follow a more practical path. Dad had nodded along, mentioning how fortunate I was to have the economics department waiting. They hadn't just dismissed my dreams. They had actively buried them. I carefully refolded the letter, slipping it into my pocket. The weight of it burned against my thigh, undeniable evidence that transformed vague suspicions into concrete betrayal. Later that morning, Sunday brunch stretched before me like a minefield. Crystal mimosa. Glasses caught the light while my stomach churned with knowledge I shouldn't possess. More quiche, Rowena? My mother asked, passing the dish before I could respond. Her pearl bracelet clinked against the china as she immediately turned to Cressida's fiancé, Professor James Whitley. James, tell us more about the department chair opening. I pushed eggs around my plate. While they discussed university politics, my existence apparently forgotten until Cressida reached over to pat my hand. You're so quiet today, Ro, she said, her voice honeyed with false concern. Still upset about the design studio interview? My father set down his napkin. About that, he cleared his throat. I took the liberty of calling the studio yesterday. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the fine china. You did what? As a reference, he explained, as though this clarified everything. I thought they should understand your history of, shall we say, flakiness when it comes to commitment. Remember your piano lessons? Ballet? That photography phase. Those were childhood activities, I said, my voice barely audible. I was 12. I also mentioned you'll likely be entering the economics graduate program this fall, he continued, ignoring my protest. No sense in them investing in someone who won't follow through. Cressida's hand tightened around mine in what anyone watching would interpret as sisterly support. I felt her fingernails pressing small crescents into my skin. It's for the best, my mother added, refilling James's coffee cup. Besides, I've been holding your mail while you've been so busy with finals. There's a placement packet from the economics department you should review. The stolen acceptance letter pulsed in my pocket. Holding my mail? My voice rose despite my effort to remain calm. For how long? She waved dismissively. Just important things, bills. School notices. A hesitation. Opportunities that might distract you. James leaned forward. The economics track provides stability, Rowena. In my professional opinion, you should at least try your family's suggested path before rebelling. Creative fields are essentially glorified hobbies. Financially speaking. Cressida nodded. You've always followed me before, Ro. Remember when we were little and played school? You let me be teacher every time. Asterisk, because you screamed when I didn't. Asterisk, I thought, but didn't say. My father's tone grew sharper. About your final semester tuition. Your mother and I have been discussing whether continuing to fund this art experimentation is the best use of family resources. What does that mean? My hands clenched into fists beneath the table. It means decisions have consequences, he replied. If you insist on pursuing this design nonsense, we may Need to reconsider our financial support. My mother added, the lease on your apartment is in our name, dear. And your car insurance. Your health coverage. Each item fell like a hammer blow. These are adult responsibilities we've been handling for you. The threat hung clear in the air. Conform or lose everything. A spark of doubt flickered through me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Years of measured praise for Cressida and tempered expectations for me had worn deep grooves in my confidence. After brunch, I sat in my car, unable to start the engine. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Rowena Carver? This is Diana Ling from Horizon Design Studio. I was impressed by your portfolio. Oddly, someone called claiming to be a reference, but spoke mostly about economics. Would you have time to meet tomorrow? Your work shows remarkable potential. Rain began tapping against the windshield, a gentle percussion that matched the pounding in my chest. I stared at the message, this small lifeline thrown from a stranger who saw value in what my family dismissed. As darkness gathered around my parked car, I wondered if breaking free meant cutting all ties. Would asserting my independence require losing my family entirely, or was there a way to maintain those bonds while still honoring my own path? What do you do when the people who should support you the most become the biggest obstacles to your growth? The rain fell harder. As I finally turned the key in the ignition, heading toward an answer I couldn't yet see, another voicemail notification appeared. Aunt Gloria this time, the third relative to call. Today with concerns about my future. Rowena, sweetie? Cressida mentioned you're going through a difficult time. Her voice dripped with manufactured sympathy. Don't throw away all your potential on a whim. Your father worked so hard to arrange that economics program. Think about what you're doing to your poor parents. I deleted the message without finishing it. The pattern had become painfully clear over the past week. Cressida had been making the rounds, painting me as unstable and impulsive to every branch of our family tree. The result? A barrage of unwanted advice from relatives who'd barely noticed me at family gatherings for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, meeting with Professor Winters tomorrow at 4. Dad arranged it. Don't be late. I stared at the message, heat rising in my chest. They'd scheduled an appointment with the economics department advisor without even asking me. Another ambush disguised as help. The sky darkened outside my apartment window as thunder rumbled in the distance. Perfect weather for my mood. I grabbed my portfolio and headed to my car, determined to drop off my latest sketches at the design studio before the storm hit. 20 minutes later, my ancient Honda made a terrible grinding noise before shuddering to a complete stop. Steam rose from under the hood as rain began to pound against the windshield in heavy sheets. I managed to coast into a small tire shop parking lot before the engine died completely. Just perfect, I muttered, resting my forehead against the steering wheel. The rain intensified, trapping me inside my dead car. My phone battery showed 12% as I searched for a tow service I could afford. Every option cost more than I had in my checking account. I was stranded, dependent on help I didn't want to ask for. The passenger window suddenly darkened with a shadow. I jumped, then saw a man in coveralls, holding an umbrella, concern on his face. I cracked the window. Car trouble? He asked, raising his voice over the downpour. Engine died, I explained. Steam coming from under the hood. I'm there, he said. I work here. Pop the hood and I'll take a look. I hesitated, calculating the potential cost against my dwindling resources. My parents' voices echoed in my head. Asterisk, this is why you need our support. You can't make it on your own. Asterisk, I'm not sure I can afford repairs right now, I admitted. Let's worry about that after we figure out what's wrong, he said, offering me his umbrella. Use this to get inside the shop while I check things out. But you'll get soaked, I replied. He shrugged. It's just water. An hour later, Thayer explained the radiator hose burst. A relatively inexpensive fix. When he noticed my portfolio case, he asked about it. I explained my design work and the studio internship. That's impressive, he said, genuinely interested in a way my family never was. When I reached for my credit card to pay, he waved it away. We had the part already, consider it. Professional courtesy. Good luck with your designs. I can't accept that, I protested. Some things matter more than money, he said with a smile that reached his eyes. That unexpected kindness stayed with me the next day as I walked into my parents' living room. Professor Winters sat on the couch, papers spread across the coffee table. Mom hovered with refreshments while Dad paced by the fireplace. Rowena, Dad said, as if summoning a wayward student his office. Professor Winters has kindly adjusted his schedule to discuss your academic future. I wasn't aware I needed career counseling, I said, remaining standing while everyone else Saturday, your father expressed concerns about your recent decisions, Professor Winters said, consulting his notes. The economics graduate program is still accepting late applications with his recommendation. I've already accepted a design internship, I reminded them. A design internship won't pay the bills, Dad countered. We just want what's best for you. The words landed like a match on dry kindling. Years of silent compliance burst into flames. No, I said, my voice steady. You want what's easiest to explain to your colleagues. A daughter who followed the approved path rather than one who chose her own way. My mother gasped. Rowena. Professor Winters, I said, turning to the startled advisor. I apologize for my family's presumption in wasting your time. My career plans are set. I walked out, ignoring my father's demands to return. For the first time, I saw clearly that I'd been seeking approval that would never come on my own terms. The consequences arrived swiftly. Dad canceled my car insurance. Mom reminded me the lease on my apartment, technically in their name, expired in 60 days. But unexpected support appeared. They offered rides to my internship when my parents took my car keys. Unlike my family's interrogations, he asked questions about my designs, listening with genuine curiosity. What inspired this logo concept? He asked one morning, glancing at my sketches while waiting at a red light. I explained my thought process without the familiar apologetic preface. Without my family's dismissive gaze, words flowed confidently about color theory and brand identity. Thayer nodded, asked follow-up questions. He might not understand every design principle, but his interest was authentic. At night, I created spreadsheets mapping my path to independence. I calculated exact figures for rent deposits, insurance premiums, student loan payments. Each number represented a link in the chain binding me to my parents, each one I needed to break. Then opportunity knocked. Miss Reeves, the design studio owner, called with unexpected news. Your latest concepts for the Davidson account impressed everyone, she said. We'd like to offer you an advance on your first 3 projects. 2 weeks later, I walked into another family dinner. This time, I carried an envelope containing my Declaration of Independence. My hands no longer trembled. I smoothed my skirt with damp palms as I stood outside my parents' colonial-style home. The engagement ring on my finger caught the porch light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the door. Taking one last deep breath, I pressed the doorbell. My mother answered with her perfect hostess smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Rowena. Right on time. She gestured me inside, her gaze flickering to my simple blue dress. Cressida. Brought a bottle of that wonderful Cabernet your father loves. Of course she did. I stepped into the familiar dining room where Dad and Cressida were already seated, wine glasses filled. The table gleamed with Mom's good china and sterling silver, the set reserved for impressing university colleagues and celebrating Cressida's achievements. Never mind. You mentioned you had an announcement, Dad said, not bothering with a greeting. Something so important it couldn't wait until after the department fundraiser next week. I took my usual seat, the one facing away from the window with the wobbly chair leg. Deliberately, I placed both hands on the table, the small diamond on my left hand unmistakable. I wanted to let you know that Thayer and I are engaged. I maintained steady eye contact with my father, not allowing my voice to lift into a question. The wedding will be in October. The silence that followed felt like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Mom's water glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's eyes narrowed to calculating slits. Only Cressida spoke, her voice honeyed with false concern. Rowena, you've only known him briefly? Don't you think that's a bit hasty? We've known each other long enough to know what I want, I corrected her. And no, I don't. Dad set his wine glass down with such precision I could tell he was struggling to maintain control. This, mechanic? Industrial welder. I interrupted. Fine, this welder, he spat the word like it was contaminated. What are his family connections, his prospects? Has he even been to college? My mother leaned forward, voice dropping to that concerned whisper she uses when discussing neighborhood scandals. Your father is only thinking of your future. Sweetheart, is this really the type of man who can provide for you? I almost laughed. After years of comparing me to Cressida, they suddenly cared about my future? Thayer owns his own business. He employs 3 people. And yes, he went to technical school. I cut a small bite of chicken, chewing slowly before continuing. But more importantly, he respects my work. He values what I create. And we don't. My father's voice rose. We've supported you your entire life. No, Dad, you've tolerated me. There's a difference. Cressida reached across the table, her perfectly manicured hand landing on my wrist. Ro, be reasonable. Mom and Dad just want to make sure you're not rushing into something because of our disagreements. I gently removed her hand. I'm not seeking your approval. I'm informing you of my decision. My father's face flushed crimson. You'll have to choose, Rowena. This man or your family. We won't support this relationship financially or otherwise. The ultimatum hung in the air. For a moment, I hesitated. Would severing ties with my family, despite their controlling nature, leave a wound that could never heal? Or would staying connected mean forever compromising my authentic self? The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. That'll be Thayer, I said quietly. He's picking me up. Mom looked genuinely startled. You invited him here? Tonight? I nodded, rising to answer. The door. When I returned with Thayer, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood, tall in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, his dark hair still damp from a shower after work. Dr. and Mrs. Carver, he said, extending his hand to my father, who reluctantly accepted it. Thank you for having me in your home. Mr. Knox. My father's voice could freeze water. Perhaps you could explain your intentions toward our daughter. Thayer's calm never wavered. I intend to build a life with her, sir. One where her talents are appreciated and her voice is heard. And what exactly do you bring to this partnership? My mother asked, emphasizing the word like it was distasteful. I restore classic cars on weekends. I run a small welding company that specializes in underwater repairs for the harbor. It's honest work. Thayer's voice remained steady. I can't offer Rowena Country Club memberships or summer homes, but I can promise she'll never have to hide her artwork or apologize for her dreams. My father stood abruptly. Rowena, if you leave with him tonight, don't expect us to bail you out when this falls apart. Your tuition, your apartment, your insurance, all of it stops. I understand. I reached for my purse, surprised by how little his threat affected me now. You can't be serious, my mother whispered, her carefully crafted composure cracking. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes, fear of losing control. Where will you even live? We have a place, I answered simply. Cressida stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Uncertainty. For the first time, my perfect twin looked unsure of her perfect path. I turned to Thayer. I need to grab a few things from my old room. 10 minutes later, I descended the stairs with a small duffel bag containing my sketchbooks, my grandmother's quilt, and a handful of photographs. Everything that mattered to me now fit in Thayer's truck. As we pulled away from the house, my mother stood in the doorway, one hand pressed against her mouth. My father had already disappeared inside. Cressida watched from the window, her silhouette still and small behind the glass. "You okay?" Thayer asked softly as we turned onto the main road. I looked in the rearview mirror, watching my childhood home shrink into the distance. "I will be." A month later, I heard Cressida's knock before I saw her through the peephole. 3 precise taps, our childhood signal. My stomach tightened as I opened the door to my studio apartment. Above Sweetwater Bakery, where the morning scent of cinnamon still lingered. "Surprised," she said, with a practiced smile, holding a cardboard box. "Mom and Dad thought you might want these." I stepped back, allowing her inside the small space there, and I had made our own. His welding sketches hung beside my designs on a corkboard. Our mattress sat on the floor, but the sheets were clean and the windows let in streams of afternoon light. Cressida set the box on our coffee table, a repurposed cable spool, salvaged and sanded smooth. She pulled out a faded photograph of us at age 8, matching summer dresses and gap-toothed smiles. "Remember this?" Her voice carried the false brightness I'd come to recognize. "Mom was organizing the attic and thought you might like to have some memories." I didn't touch the photo. "What are you really doing here?" "Cress." Her smile faltered. "Dad had some chest pains last week." The words landed like stones. I waited for the guilt to crash over me, but instead, I noticed how she watched my reaction, measuring its effect. "Nothing serious," she continued when I didn't respond. "Just stress. He misses you, Ro. They both do." "Enough to apologize?" She sighed, the long-suffering sound I'd heard 1,000 times. "If you would just come home, apologize for the scene you made." "The scene I made?" "When they threatened to cut me off for making my own choice." Cressida's gaze traveled around our modest apartment, lingering on the water stain in one corner of the ceiling. "I'm worried about you. This place. And Thayer. You know how men like him operate, right? You're a carver. He sees $signs. My laugh startled us both. "Is that what Dad told you to say?" She had the decency to blush. I crossed to the small desk in the corner and unlocked the bottom drawer. "Let me show you something." I spread our financial records across the table, a neatly organized spreadsheet of Thayer's growing underwater welding business, my design commissions, our savings account balance, and the down payment fund for our future home. "I manage our finances," I explained, watching her scan the numbers with widening eyes. "Thayer makes triple what I do right now with his dive certifications, but we split expenses evenly. The business account is joint. Everything transparent." Her finger hovered over the home savings column. "You've saved this much. When you're not trying to impress economics professors with designer clothes, it's amazing what you can put aside." I closed the folder. I've never been happier or more certain of my worth than since I stopped measuring it by our parents' yardstick. Cressida left without the photo box, her mission unsuccessful. 3 years passed in a blur of growth and hard work. The university faculty fundraiser glittered with crystal and academic prestige. I wouldn't be here if Cressida hadn't insisted, claiming it was time to mend fences. Thayer promised to meet me after his emergency dive job. I stood alone near a sculpture display when I heard my sister's laugh, pitched to Carrie. "Yes, my twin still fancies herself an artist," she told a circle of colleagues, her voice honeyed with false concern. Living in that tiny apartment, still dependent on our parents' generosity, we keep hoping she'll grow out of this phase. I stepped forward, ready to correct her when the crowd shifted. Thayer appeared in the entrance, still in his work clothes, clean but worn jeans, boots, and a button-down shirt with the diving company logo. His hands bore the calluses of honest work, his shoulders straight with quiet confidence. Cressida's smug smile faltered as he walked directly to Dean Wallace. "Mr. Knox," the dean said warmly, shaking Thayer's hand, "we weren't expecting you this evening." "Wouldn't miss it," Thayer replied, reaching into his jacket. He handed the dean an envelope, The donation we discussed for the expanded arts program. The dean opened it, his eyebrows rising. $25,000. Your continued generosity is remarkable. The room quieted, Cressida's mouth opened slightly. My wife taught me that true wealth isn't what you have, Thayer said, finding me in the crowd with his eyes, but what you build and share. The dean raised his glass to the Knoxes, whose support has been instrumental in our new digital design lab. I joined Thayer, sliding my hand into his as. Whispers rippled through the gathering. A professor I didn't recognize leaned toward his colleague. Isn't that Dr. Carver's daughter? The one who, yes, the other replied. Did you hear about the investigation? Academic fraud allegations, something about research. Falsification. My father wasn't here tonight, neither was my mother. I caught Cressida's eyes. Across the room. For a moment, I saw something I'd never witnessed before, fear. The golden child, suddenly standing alone as her admirers drifted away. Thayer squeezed my hand. Ready to go home? I nodded, turning toward the exit. The question followed us, when my parents inevitably reach out for help with the scandal, what will I do? The old Rowena would have rushed to their rescue, desperate for approval. But as Thayer and I walked out under the night sky, I realized I'm not that person anymore. Behind us, Cressida stood abandoned, finally experiencing what I felt all those years, the weight of being truly alone. 3 years later, the sunlight streamed through the bay windows of our townhouse, catching the edges of my framed artwork that lined the hallway. No longer hidden in portfolios or tucked away in drawers, my designs breathed life into every corner of the space there, and I now called home. I ran my fingers along the smooth surface of my drafting table, admiring the three-dimensional model of an eco-friendly community center that won me my first major contract last month. The spare bedroom had transformed into my sanctuary, walls painted the warm amber I always wanted, but was never allowed in my childhood home. Sketches and blueprints covered the corkboards, evidence of projects completed and dreams still taking shape. In the corner sat a small desk where Adrian, my first design apprentice, worked 3 afternoons a week. Your perspective on sustainable materials changed how I approach every project, she told me. Yesterday, her eyes bright with the same passion I once doubted in myself. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Thayer answered in the kitchen, his voice dropping to a serious tone that immediately drew my attention. Ro, he called, covering the receiver. Your parents are at the front gate. Security wants to know if they should be allowed in. 3 years ago, those words would have sent me spiraling into anxiety, scrambling to hide evidence of my authentic self before their arrival. Today, I felt only a calm resolve settling over me like a familiar blanket. Tell them I'll meet them at the gate, I answered, my voice steady. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, shoulders straight, eyes clear. The daughter who once trembled at her father's disapproving glance was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth wasn't measured by academic accolades or family approval. The walk to the community entrance took exactly 4 minutes. With each step, memories surfaced. Christmas report card readings, hidden acceptance letters, financial ultimatums, then faded away, losing their power to wound. Thayer followed a few paces behind, close enough to offer support but far enough to make it clear this was my conversation to lead. His quiet strength reminded me daily of what partnership truly means. Marlene's making your favorite tea, he said softly. It'll be waiting when you're done. The thought of my mother-in-law, with her warm hugs and genuine interest in my designs, brought a smile to my face. She'd rearranged her entire sewing room to create a display wall for my early sketches, proudly showing them to everyone who visited. My parents stood awkwardly at the gate, looking smaller somehow. Dad's shoulders sagged beneath his once imposing tweed jacket. Mom clutched her handbag with white knuckles. The newspaper headlines about Dad's academic fraud investigation and subsequent university dismissal flashed through my mind. Rowena, Dad began, using my full name as always. We need to talk about family responsibility during difficult times. I noticed the worn edges of their suitcases. The foreclosure notice must have finally come through. We only need a place to stay until things settle, Mom added, her eyes darting to the homes visible beyond the gate. Just for a little while. My hand moved instinctively to my abdomen, still flat but harboring the 8-week secret Thayer and I had celebrated just last night. On my design table, preliminary sketches for the nursery room sat, filled with possibility and unconditional love. I'm sorry, I said. The words genuine but firm. That won't be possible. Their faces crumpled with disbelief, the same expression they wore when I first refused to follow their predetermined path. The difference is that now their disappointment held no power over me. I turned back toward home with Thayer's hand in mine, my voice finally and completely my own. Some people inherit love and support, while others must fight to create it for themselves. As I closed the door on my past to protect my future, I wondered, at what point do we owe more to the family we choose than the family we're born into? Would you have offered help to those who once abandoned you, or protected the peace you'd fought so hard to build?